Hey guys, what's up? Alec Torelli. We're going to talk about how to gain financial independence. So there's really two types of people when it comes to money. And which type you are is probably going to determine your path, or lack thereof, toward financial independence. So let's say we'll use two examples. One is John, who gets $1,000 in a tax credit. Okay, COVID stimulus check, gets $1,000. The first thing that John does with that money determines the type of person that John is. So if he goes and spends it on a stereo or goes out to dinner and then decides he's going to save whatever's left over after he does what he wants, that's person A. So this person has what's called high time preference. Time preference is a way to measure whether people are short-term thinking or long-term thinking, whether they're looking into the future or very fixated on what's happening in the present. High time preference people are the people that, if you heard the famous marshmallow experiment, they eat the marshmallow, right? So they're given the choice between having one marshmallow now or two marshmallows later. They eat the marshmallow. So the second type of person, let's say Sarah, she's given the $1,000 tax credit. The first thing that Sarah does is invests a portion of that. Now, what portion is not as important as the decision to invest a portion, but she invests a portion in that. She pays off some debt, and then whatever's left over, after she pays herself and invests in herself, she then uses on discretionary spending. That person has a low time preference, meaning they're very forward thinking, they're looking into the future. So the real difference, the paradigm shift, I think, with the two types of people when it comes to money is wealthy people invest first and spend what's left. Poor people spend first and invest the rest. Most people fail to budget and they have excess spending habits. So what's left over is almost always nothing, because there's always something that you can fill in to spend. There's a never-ending limit to desire. That's why capitalist economies work. There's always people that want more of something. There's human nature's always to want more. So if you're spending first, you're probably going to spend all that money, and then there's not going to be anything left over to invest because the limits of desire are endless, right? And so the caveat to this is that I'm really sympathetic to people that are dealt bad hands, and I know I've talked about this a lot on my crypto channel, how the system is unfair. There's a great keynote that I gave, a short, concise keynote called Everything There Is Divided by 21 Million, which really talks about this. I'll put it up here, about how the system's kind of unfair. And the reality is, whether we choose to accept it or not, we can't control the hand we're dealt, only how we play the cards. So my content is always focused on the decision that you have. How do we empower ourselves as the individual to make decisions that are better? How can we make more conscious, better decisions to improve the quality of our lives? So sure, there's some people that are born rich. There's some people that just have a lot of money. There's some people that have more opportunity than other people. There's some people that get dealt aces, and there's some people that get dealt 6-4. That's the way life works. But I think the only thing we can do is focus on the quality of how we play our hand, not the hand that we're dealt. So I think a cynic would really say, poor people have expenses, debt, obligations, they have no money to invest. But there's a lot of people that have wealth that did not start with wealth. So they started out, and you hear these stories of people that started with nothing and then they built to something, right? So how do they build to something? That's the real thing to focus on. And that's, I think, what is the obvious response to a skeptic. And it's that mindset shift of saying, okay, well, if someone else started with not a lot of money and they grew to having a lot of money, how did they do that, right? And so I think the common logic is to say, well, I'm just going to make a lot of money, and when I make more than, whatever this distant dream is of how much I could make in the future, then I'll have money to save because I'll be making so much that I'll be able to cover all of the things that I want to spend money on now, or the obligations I have right now. The problem with that, as that number gets bigger, right? Let's say you're making, $50K, and if you only made $100K, well, you can live off 50, you'd have 50 more to invest, and you would invest all the rest of the 50. The problem is that as we progress through life and we improve our financial situation, our demand increases as well, and we fill in things to fit that financial situation, and then we live up to the means of what we make. And so it's easy to raise the lifestyle from a 50K lifestyle to a 100K lifestyle, and suddenly we need to make 200K, and then we'll have 100K left over to invest. Then we make 200K, we need 400K, we'll have 400K left over to invest. It's this rat race, but it's also this feedback loop that's not really accurate, right? And it's a disservice to think like that, right? But I believe the truth lies in saying, okay, like there's other people who would desire my financial situation. This is true for most people. Almost certainly if you're watching this video on your, whatever, $1,000 smartphone, it's almost definitely true for you, right? There's people that desire your financial situation. There's people that have a worse financial situation than you. And there's people with a worse financial situation than you that still save. So how do I model myself after those people, right? What are they doing that's different than what I'm doing? And how are they paying themselves first? And so that's the real shift. And if you look at the way that money compounds, it's really profound, right? Like Einstein says, the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest, right? So take this simple example, the profound nature of compound interest, right? So if you take 30 steps linear, in a linear fashion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you get to 30. It's obvious, right? You're counting in a linear fashion. But if you take 30 steps exponentially, in other words, you're compounding, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 30 steps exponentially, you know what it is? What do you think it is? Like, take a second. 30 steps linear is 30. What's 30 steps exponentially? What's the first number that comes to your mind? But the answer is 1 billion. So it's incredibly profound. Like, if you can compound money over a long period of time, this is how like the wealthy people get rich. They're like Warren Buffett, buys assets, never sells them, and they compound. Right. So I did some modeling here. You can just Google a compound interest calculator. But let's say I consulted with someone recently that was debating between living with his parents or living in a bigger city. And the difference was $2,000 a month that he could have saved, right? So that $2,000 a month, let's say you do that for 2 years, you live with your parents for 2 years, that $2,000 a month is $48,000. So this is one decision, right? You save $48,000 starting and you save $250 additionally every month. Just $250, depending on what you make, may or may not be a lot of money, but average salary, it's possible, I think, to save $250. So if you save $250 and you earn 7% a year for 20 years, that $48,000 plus the additional amount you invest when you're saving in 20 years is $300,000, more than $300,000. So that's the power of compound interest. It's pretty staggering. And that's the real way toward financial independence. It's a get rich slowly approach. I think that's great advice that Phil Locke once told me. I asked him about wealth and just, advice he had and things he learned throughout his life. He told me, you get rich slowly. That really stuck with me. And over my life, I've had periods where I've made a lot and I haven't saved a lot because my spending habits, matched my lifestyle. I increased my lifestyle to match what I was making. And I didn't save a lot. So the delta wasn't that big. And I've had other periods in my life where I made a lot less, but I saved a lot more because I made those conscious trades. And, for example, I was living in Macau once and, they're playing poker. We're playing some high stakes poker games. Like the games in US dollars were 100, 200, no limit. So, $20,000 US buy-in, but even bigger than that, those were the average games. I limited myself to $5 a day in discretionary spending. So I literally would go to the MGM, which was connected to where we lived in this building called One Central, which was right next to the Wynn where we played poker. And the MGM is at the bottom of One Central. So I'd go down there and there was a pastry shop there and they had these like fancy pastries. But with $5 you can still buy a pastry. So I would every day I would go and buy a different pastry as a treat. And maybe it would just be like a piece of chocolate one day or like a little bun one day or a little tart one day. And that would be the dessert I would have. So it would be my indulgence of my food because my diet was super on point for playing high stakes poker, but it was also my indulgence for my spending, right? And some days maybe it was like a Starbucks coffee or something like that. I would get one, a matcha latte, one thing a day, right? And this was the only discretionary money I spent other than my living expenses. And I lived off that for 30 days or 60 days, however long I was there. I lived that way. And so all that extra money that I made playing poker just went straight into savings, right? And so that money compounded making good investments, like I talk about on my crypto channel, that think about the long-term investment strategy is really a way to get ahead. So how you approach money is a big starter. And I think it's really good to start small because I think saving is really addicting. So I think when you see the seeds that you plant grow and those increase over time, and it gets exciting, it gets really addicting. It's kind of like building a new habit that's empowering, like meditating or cold showers or fasting or working out. You don't want to miss a day. You start to get addicted to the positivity and the dopamine and the effects of that habit. And saving and building a nest egg is really the same way. So I think I really challenge people to audit their finances and to keep track of every dollar you spend. This is an exercise I've done in, I don't know, 4 or 5 cities that I've lived in around the world, different continents, different countries. And it's fascinating. Like the simple act, what gets measured gets managed. So the simple act of keeping track of your spending has a profound impact on your awareness of where your money is going. And also it allows you to really figure out where are the 1 or 2 areas in your life where your spending isn't in line with your priorities. It's not always about spending less, it's about spending consciously. So, spending money on things that you really value that don't necessarily cost a lot, that you're getting a lot of ROI, make a lot of sense. So I kept track of my spending when I was in Italy, and I went to the coffee shop every day, and I bring my computer and I would work there. And it felt very indulgent. Like I was outside the house. It didn't really feel like I was working because I was in a coffee shop. I love that environment of people and hustle and ordering a cool latte or whatever. And I would sit there for 2-3 hours and it felt like, shit, I'm doing this every day. I must be wasting a lot of money. And I kept track of all the money I spent in coffee shops for the month. And I spent $150. So my entirety of my work budget, coffee shops, I get the value, there's intrinsic value in ordering a drink. I got that excitement. I got the pleasure of being out. Plus I got my work done in a stimulating environment. All of that was $150 a month. So I was like, why am I going to cut it? What am I going to cut it to? 100? I'm going to go to a coffee shop less? How much am I going to cut? Where's the room to cut? There's not that much. So why am I going to even focus on this category of my life where I'm getting all this value and all this joy and all this pleasure for $150 a month? That's amazing. That's super high ROI on the money I'm spending. But there's other areas of life where you might be spending money on things that you don't even value that much, but you're spending even more than that. And you're spending 3, 4, 5x that on things or on material or on, you're not traveling consciously or whatever it is, right? And so those things can be cut and channeled toward either saving to build your nest egg or conscious trades, as I call them, to channel to spending on things that are giving you more value, right? So this is kind of the equation. And I think when you put all this together and you really start seeing the effects of money compounding, it's very, very exciting. So start small. Leave your thoughts in a comment below. Subscribe to this channel. I put out more content on making better decisions on here. So thanks for your time. I'll see you in the next one.